Shameless plugs are shameless. Hello guys, this is UniversalGiant. Welcome back for more of Mario Golf Toadstool Tour. Last time we did the first tournament, and today we'll be doing the second tournament. I wanted to do a character that Snicker likes using, but I'm not sure which one he likes best. I guess I'll go with Bowser Jr. I think you'll like him, right? So, to give you an idea as to exactly how long I've been planning on doing this and just haven't found the time to, the rant I originally had planned for this course was what I was expecting from Pokémon X and Y before the games came out. And it's been more than 2 weeks. So I will tell you that by this point, I have long since cleared the game. And to give you the shortest summary of my opinion on it that I can, I'm not really sure how to feel. On the one hand, I thought it was the most enjoyable one to play through. On the other, I feel it was the most disappointing. Are you kidding me? 0.42 feet again! It could be any other distance. 0.42 feet again. But regardless, I mean, the graphics, even that I'm on the fence about. Like, the in-battle graphics, the 3D effects, those are beautiful. Don't get me wrong, I love those. But the rest of the game, I mean, first of all, half the game is in 3D, the other half isn't. Why did they do it that way? And even if they did, the overworld 3D areas don't really serve much of a purpose. I mean, you go through a dungeon, it's in 3D, whoop-de-doo, what does that add to the dungeon? So that I'm not really sure about, and besides that, even the rest of the game, all of the mechanics are the same. I mean, it's a Pokemon game, what more do you expect? I know, and that was really my thinking going into it as well. But there was part of me that was really hoping that it would be more than it turned out that it was. That said, it really was an enjoyable experience to play through the first time. I just warn you, if you haven't gotten the game yet, to take your time with it. The reason I say that is that once you clear the game, once you beat the Elite Four and become champion, there's really one quest you can do that probably isn't one you'll be interested in doing. And that's all the post-game has to offer. I mean, you have the Friend Safari, and that's cool. You kidding me? 0.4 feet again! You and your 0.4 feet can shove it! So you really do want to take your time and enjoy the journey of the game. The one thing I will say they did a fantastic job with, in terms of adding to the game, is all based on competitive play. I mean, they've made IV breeding, they've made EV training, a ton of improvements they've made to the metagame. Even the only reason the fairy type exists is to balance the metagame. Like, they've done a lot of improvements to the metagame to make it so much better, but if you're not interested in the metagame, really not much has changed. Maybe I shouldn't have backspawned. So, I think we'll have to go middle for this one. Probably can't do it with a short. Well, it's about time one of those shots went in. I mean, seriously. I don't think I've seen Bowser Jr.'s Eagle thing. You'd think if he wanted to be an airplane so much, he'd use airships a little bit less. I will say about X and Y that I'm not See, this is exactly how I feel about the game, that I'm torn between whether or not to love it or hate it. I mean, there are a lot of things about the aesthetics and the music and the new Pokemon themselves that I like, and others that I don't, and I'm just torn.
Nice shot.
Some of the music, I will say, is fairly good or fairly catchy, but I will say it's all very forgettable.
Nice on. Birdie putt.
And they use the same music for certain routes or towns over and over and over again, to the point where you're just waiting to hear something new that you haven't heard before, and you hear the same thing in the same part of the region. Like 3 or 4 different routes, one after the other, will have the same music. I mean, even in the Game Boy games, they at least changed it up a little bit. That might be in the water. I hope it's not. It's got a very weird angle. That's in the bunker. I can deal with it. We're only 45 yards away. It's just... I want to like it.
Nice shot.
But even completing the Pokédex, it... Maybe I just blew through the game too quickly. Just like everybody else did. Like, it's the game that everybody has at the same time, and you want to play it through with everybody else. It's part of the fun of getting a game so early to launch. Or so soon after launch. But one of the things that I detest most about Pokemon games is that you only get to play them through once unless you want to delete your file. And I've seen a lot of people doing that. One of the reasons why I think emulating Pokemon games is so popular is because you only get to play them through once. And after that, your game is done. There's really not much else you can do with it. You don't have a second chance to play it through.
Nice on. Birdie putt.
So, this being the first Pokemon game that you can't immediately emulate to replay through, that finally comes back. That in the era of Red, Blue, Yellow, Gold, and Silver, they hadn't come up with these emulators yet, so once you play them through, that was it. And although I wasn't around for the 3rd generation or the 4th gen, I imagine that that was when emulators started coming into play. I think that was in the early 2000s. So, even though you had played it through on the cartridge, I can't do a short, that you could always play it through again. The opportunity was there. It might not have been the most legal means in the world, but you did have the cartridge. You had a right to play it through on an emulator or any other means by which you could play the game. At least that's how I see it. If you own the cartridge, if you own the console, you have just as much a right to emulate it as you do to play it on the console it was intended for. I mean, that gets a little bit shaky when you're talking about PC versus, like, arcade or virtual console. How many different systems do you have to own the same game on? Like, think about how many different consoles Ocarina of Time is on. Okay, I missed the A button on that one. It's a little bit late. But it originally came out for the N64. Then if you pre-ordered Wind Waker, you got the Master Quest GameCube disc. You could play it Virtual Console on the Wii, which I think is the fastest legal way you can do it, at least in terms of speedrunning. And you have the 3DS remake. So that's 4 different systems. Why did I super topspin onto the green? Yeah, if I make this eagle putt, this is probably the toughest putt I've had to do in a long while. But you have the game on so many different consoles. Like, at what point do you say, I own the N64 one? Aren't I entitled to be able to play it on the Wii? Or is it even right of somebody to ask that? Are you supposed to buy it on the Wii in order to be able to access the exact same game with slightly better load times or something? I don't know what the differences are. But it's... it's the first time with the Game Boy game, or the first time with the Pokemon game, that you can't emulate it to play it through again. And I think it hurts the game more because of how little post-game content that there is. I mean, if it was something like Black 2, White 2, you had so much post-game stuff to do. Even if you didn't want to do it, it was there for you if you did. And if you wanted to come back to the game a little bit later, there was a ton of stuff for you to do. Not so much with this game. Even the Elite Four are the exact same level if you go to rematch them. There's literally nothing else there for you. Once you clear the game, all you have to do is make yourself a competitive team. And yeah, completing the Pokédex, but that doesn't take all that long. Most people aren't interested in doing that either. I mean, that's there for you too, and I try to do that in my spare time if I get the chance. Like if I'm on a long car ride, what I was doing with Black 2, White 2, I would just go around trying to catch stuff that I didn't have before. Just as a little time killer. I don't know how many other people do that, but even that's there. But there are so few Pokemon X and Y compared to the other games, or at least it feels that way, because I only have 6 boxes full, and I found most of the stuff that I can catch. Is this part 4? It's a really long part 4, at least it looks that way.
Nice shot.
But that brings me to another point with X and Y. How many new Pokemon do they add? I think it's 70-something? The fewest in a new generation? And I think most of them are fairly neat, but that's a pretty underwhelming number, isn't it? 70-something? I mean, you had 649 going into Gen 6, and I guess they figured, you know, enough is enough, we don't need to keep adding new Pokemon, but part of the fun of playing a new game is trying out all of the new Pokemon that you can find. So it's disappointing when you get there and you only see a few. And that brings me to another point. And this is where I disagree with a lot of people who have played the game through before. If you haven't, you've probably heard a lot about the game being too easy. And people complaining that they breezed through the game to the point where they got to the champion and they were, like, I don't know, they would say they were like 15 levels over the champion, just for argument's sake.
Nice shot.
The reason for this, if you haven't played the game but are familiar with the Pokemon franchise, you normally get something called an experience share, which allows you to share the experience you gain off of defeating an opponent with one other Pokemon in your party, like a hold item. In X and Y, this was replaced with something called the Experience All. Now, normally, with the Experience Share, the experience you earn from defeating one opponent is split between all party members holding the Experience Share. So if you defeat somebody that has 300 experience, your lead would get 150, and your Pokemon holding the X share would give you 150. You'd still have 300 total. The Experience All of the Pokemon that entered into the fight get full experience, and any Pokemon in your party that was not in the fight gets half the experience. The reason why this is different is because you get more experience than the Pokemon is worth. If the Pokemon was worth 300 experience and you defeated him, the Pokemon in the lead would get the full 300. And everyone else in the party would get 150. So the total amount of experience that you would get from that, I think, comes out to 750 experience from that 300 experience opponent. And if all Pokemon entered into the fight, you'd get a total 1800 experience from a 300 experience opponent. And at this rate, your party gains experience 3.5 times as quickly as it did in the previous generations.
Birdie putt.
And although this doesn't lead to leveling up 3.5 times as quickly, it makes the game a lot easier if you're not careful with how quickly you earn experience. The reason why I disagree with people saying the game is too easy is because you're not... two things. One, you're not forced to have the experience all on at all times. And two, it's much easier to keep your levels in check if you rotate your team. And one of the things that I intended to do when I got X and Y, because I chose Fennekin and wanted to choose Charmander, I wanted to rotate my team. So every time a couple of Pokemon started getting higher level than the others, I would simply rotate them out for somebody else. And in this respect, I found myself at exactly the level I wanted to be when I got to the Elite Four and the Champion. Like, the Champion's highest level was 68. I think I was about 10 levels under when I went in. As opposed to everybody else that was, say, 10 or 15 levels over by that point. So, in that respect, I kind of disagree with everybody else. Don't look at it as something to complain about with the game. Look at it as an opportunity. Because a lot of Pokemon games force you to grind towards the end, even if you stick with the same team of 6. And here, they finally give you a game where you can openly rotate your team. You can have a full team of 12! And still have everybody right at the levels that they should be by the time you get to the end. I think that's fantastic, and a lot of other people just throw it away saying the game's too easy.
Nice shot.
It's a missed opportunity. It gives you the chance to play through a game with a roster larger than 6. But the problem is, if you don't know that going in, and if you don't realize before you start the game that this will happen, that your team will overlevel, you'll get to that point when it's too late. And even at that point, I mean, I've had a couple of friends tell me, how was I supposed to know my team was going to be overleveled? You can see it! You can see that your Pokemon are 5 or 10 levels over than everybody else is. It's not as if it's something that just happens out of the blue. You can see it, and you can make the appropriate change. But if you haven't played the game before, if you haven't gone through it, or if you're not too far into it, it's something that I'd recommend you consider doing, because it certainly made my experience a lot more enjoyable. But that said, I can't help but feel disappointed that I can't go through it and experience it again, and that there's so little at the end of the game. That I feel that I can't really enjoy it now that I've cleared it. But I'm sure I'll find a way to keep myself interested, and if anybody... Like, the one thing at the end that I'm considering doing is the Friend Safari, and the Friend Safari is like the Safari Zone, where if you have a friend on your 3DS, you can get Pokemon from them, similar to the Safari Zone. And the interesting thing is that you're guaranteed 2 31 IVs with anything you catch there, and some stuff can have hidden abilities, so... If anybody's interested in sharing 3DS friend codes for that, and assuming Snicker's okay with me putting our 3DS code in the video description, I'll do that. I was told I have the Fire Starter, I think it's Braxian, or whatever it's called, in my Safari, so if anybody wants one of those, you're more than welcome to post your code, and assuming that I can share mine, we can do that. But other than that, I'm really not sure what else we can do with the game. It's a bit depressing. But those are my opinions on Pokemon X and Y. I'm sure I'll think of something I forgot to mention by the time I edit the video, but regardless, this is all I wanted to plan for the Toadstool Tour update. Hopefully by next week I'll have my new Let's Play ready and raring to go. For the next time I do Toadstool Tour, whenever that happens to be, I'm more than welcome to taking your suggestions as to what character you want to see me play as for the next one. Because I'm really used to using Yoshi, but I'm welcome to trying the other characters as well. But anyway, I don't know when that's going to be. I just figured that it's something that we could do. And if I don't have anything interesting to talk about, I'd also appreciate if you could give me discussion topics for the next Mario Golf video. I don't know if... I'd rather them not be like current events or something that may not be relevant a month or two from now, because I don't know the next time I'll be doing this, but just a general discussion topic if you want to post one. I'd be more than happy to consider doing it for the next video. Either way, this is UniversalGiant. I hope you guys enjoyed this little bit of Toadstool tour, and we'll come back to it whenever I do. Until then, look forward to my next Let's Play, hopefully starting next week. This is UniversalGiant. I'll see you then.